So we are very pleased to be joined this morning by our great friend Matt Stoller, who writes the big big newsletter over there on Substack. That's what I'm trying to say, and also is a researcher at the American Economic Liberties Project. Great to see you, my friend.
Good to see you, man.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So we saw Mark Zuckerberg on the Joe Rogan podcast saying some very interesting things, and immediately thought the person that we want to hear from on this is Matt Stoller. Specifically, he made kind of a similar move to Mark Andreessen of, let me talk about some like cultural things that I think will resonate with the Republican, like conservative base. And let me go ahead and then U-turn into trashing the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau and any other agencies that are trying to come after and regulate my businesses. Let's take a listen to a little bit of how that went.
They want us to take down this meme of Leonardo DiCaprio looking at a TV talking about how 10 years from now or something, you're going to see an ad that says, okay, if you took a COVID vaccine, you're eligible for, for this kind of payment, like this sort of like class action lawsuit type meme. And they're like, no, you have to take that down. And we just said, no, we're not going to take down humor and satire. We're not going to take down things that are true. And then at some point, I guess, I don't know, it flipped a bit. I mean, Biden, when he gave some statement at some point, I don't know if it was a press conference or to some journalists, where he basically was like, these guys are killing people. And I don't know, then like all these different agencies and branches of government basically just like started investigating, coming after our company. It was brutal. It was brutal. And we had organizations that were looking into us that were like not really involved with social media. Like I think like the CFPB, like this financial, I don't even know what it stands for. It's the financial organization that Elizabeth Warren had set up.
Oh, great.
And it's basically, it's like, we're not a bank.
The
right?
debanking section.
Yeah, no, so like we're not a bank, right? It's like what does Meta have to do with this? But they kind of found some theory that they wanted to investigate, and it's like, okay, clearly they were trying really hard, right, to like find some theory, but it like, I don't know, it kind of like throughout the party and the government, there was just sort of, I don't know how this stuff works. I mean, I've never been in government. I don't know if it's like a directive or it's just like a quiet consensus that like, we don't like these guys, they're not doing what we want, we're going to punish them.
Probably the part of that irritates me the most is him playing dumb, like he doesn't know what the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau is. But in any case, Matt, if you could break down what he had to say there and what you think he's really up to.
Yeah, so the whole thing is, it's one of these things where there's so much dishonesty packed into such a short amount of time, it's hard to convey it. But like, let's just start with the timing. Okay, so Mark Zuckerberg is pretending that he doesn't know anything about banking regulation, and that the only time that he encountered it is when, they were scuffling with the Biden administration over COVID speech. And then all of a sudden, this random bureau that he's never heard of went after him. Okay, so one of his first early major hires was Sheryl Sandberg, and she worked at Treasury, right? She was Larry Summers' chief of staff at Treasury. And he hired her explicitly because of that. He said Facebook is more like a government than a business. We're really setting policies. That's why we're hiring Sheryl Sandberg. I don't know why people forget about this, but Facebook tried to launch a currency. Like, you remember that?
Oh,
yeah. We remember.
We all covered it together. Yeah.
Yeah. It's not hidden, right? Mark Zuckerberg testified before the banking committees in Congress. Right. I mean, he's testified before the committees saying, here are all the things we want to do with our with our new currency system. And he defended himself and said, these are all of the things we're doing with regulators. And this is during the Trump administration. And the Trump administration killed Libra, which was the currency system. Right. So it's not like this stuff started under Biden. It started way before Biden, way before COVID. And they have money transfer licenses in states, I think 49 out of 50 states, and they've had them for years. They have a system called Meta Pay. They have a payment system. They want to become a payments network, and they are a payments network, and they've been regulated that way for a long time. So Mark Zuckerberg knows about that, and he's just pretending otherwise so that he can frame himself as a as somebody who's currying favor with Trump, just like in 2020, 2021, he was trying to curry favor with Biden by pretending to be progressive. He doesn't care about any of this stuff. He doesn't care about censorship. He cares about policy concessions that he wants from the government. And I can go into a list of those policy concessions, but like what this guy is standing for is himself and making more money. And that's really all he wants. And to do that at this point with so much money and power that he has, he needs favors from the US government. That's what he's trying to get from Trump.
What I was really interested is to see is, he really is a weather vane in some respects. So he follows the Twitter decision to take down Donald Trump after January 6th. Previously in the 2020 election, he donates all this money to kind of pro-democratic causes. He has now reversed DEI in his company. Actually, I think we have that tweet. Can we put it up there on the screen? All of the things that Meta and Mark Zuckerberg have done now in the last week or so, brought back political content, ended DEI, hired a MAGA comm staffer, elevated Joel Kaplan, got rid of fact-checking, donated to the Trump inauguration, added Dana White to his board of directors, goes to Mar-a-Lago, goes to Rogan. And we have all of these things.
Moved to Texas with him, which in my view is in some ways the wildest.
Yeah, moving the content moderation to Texas, which is equally hilarious. All of that tells us what? Is that this is a person who is trying to curry favor with the incoming administration. Now, you just talked about the actual political concessions, but let's get into that because we have these lawsuits that are going on against Mark Zuckerberg, against Meta. We have many Republican AGs and others which have now longstanding legal theories and cases against this company. What do they have to lose if things don't go their way under a second Trump administration?
So as you were talking, I just remembered something else, which I think will really take it out of the partisan, context. You remember a while back when Mark Zuckerberg was trying to get into China, and he asked Xi Jinping, the president of the leader of China, to name his firstborn child.
I do remember that. Yeah.
Right. I mean, so this is not like a guy that has strong principles, right? This is a guy or at least he does, but they're about, promoting Mark Zuckerberg and Facebook's interest or Meta's interest, whatever they want to call it. So what does Facebook actually want? All right. Facebook has a number of legal problems. The first is there's an antitrust suit that the Trump administration brought in 2020. And Mark Zuckerberg has called antitrust an existential threat to his company. Right. And that will go to trial in 2025. Google lost a kind of similar case and is likely to lose another one. So Mark Zuckerberg knows that he could be in a lot of trouble, and he wants that to go away. He wants the Trump administration to settle that. There's also remember the Cambridge Analytica scandal, where they got fined by $5 billion by the Trump administration, the Trump FTC. So they continue to violate their promises to the government. And finally, the Federal Trade Commission said, you can no longer track children, right? You can't advertise to children, use targeting advertising. And when you release new products, you have to get prior approval because you have consistently violated your promises to the government, like two or three or four times. And they are in a big legal fight over that. That would be a huge problem for them. And because they want to advertise to children because it's good business to addict children. And so they want that to go away, right? That's another thing that they want. They also Meta Pay, right? They want to become a big, payments network. And Mark Zuckerberg talked about that. That's part of the VR strategy, the augmented reality strategy. It's part of what they, making the world more open and connected. That is what he talked about partly on Joe Rogan. That involves finance. So he's going to be regulated by the financial regulators. And the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau implemented a new rule to treat companies like Meta and Google and Amazon and other companies that have big payment networks to treat them like banks, because that's what they're operating like. If you are handling someone's money, then you should be treated like either a bank or financial utility, or a credit rating agency. Like that's, that's all financial regulation. So they want that to go away. Another example of something that Mark Zuckerberg needs is he has been training their AI model on illegally downloaded content. He personally gave the order to train on content that was downloaded via illegal means. And so they want certain changes to copyright law so that they can continue to expropriate content from people who make copyrighted material, including us, right? I mean, this is all copyrighted material, and train their AI on it so they can replicate our styles and systems and make money off of that. Some of the things he wants are not bad, right? Like he's really mad at Apple over the 30% app charge, and the government has an antitrust case against Apple partly over that, so he would want that to continue. And then the other thing that he's been asking for is for the U.S. government to protect Facebook when they go abroad. So there's a lot of foreign entities that are regulating Facebook and Meta and WhatsApp, like communication systems, right? If your domestic communication system, you're going to be regulated by that domestic government. And so he wants Trump to protect Facebook from rules around, whatever foreign countries are trying to get. And sometimes that's not great. Sometimes it is great, whatever. But it's like, look, if you're operating in a foreign country, you have to obey their laws. And Mark Zuckerberg wants the U.S. government to put pressure on foreign countries that are imposing laws that prevent him from making more money. There's a lot of other things that they want as well. There's an H-1B visa thing. They have a lot of H-1B visa engineers. They've been violating labor law on that. There's kind of a ton of stuff that they want. But effectively, at this point, Meta is a creature of policy. And so what he has to do to continue to grow, or even to not be constrained or not have his company broken up, is to capture the policymakers. And so that's what he's trying to do. That's what he's always tried to do, whether it's China, whether it's the progressives and Democrats, whether it's people all over the policymakers all over the world, whatever it is. That's just who he is and what he's trying to do.
Last question for you, Matt. What role is Rogan serving in this? Because he just had, obviously, Zuckerberg on. He had Elon Musk on recently. He had Peter Thiel on recently. We talked to you previously about Mark Andreessen, who also took aim specifically at CFPB, and some of the way that he portrayed the CFPB clearly had landed with Rogan, because he kind of reiterates that view to Zuckerberg and said, oh yeah, Elizabeth Warren's agency that does the deep banking, which is just like total and complete bullshit. But in any case, what role is Rogan serving? Why are they feeling like this is the place to go and try to effectively fleece the MAGA base and convince them that their cultural goals are in line with, happen to line up with these companies' financial interests?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of sad. I have been I like listening to Joe Rogan. He's a really good interviewer. I like, I've listened to him for years. I'm not a religious devotee or anything, but I listen to him sometimes, and I like him. He's a cool interviewer. He's not annoying. He's generally been open-minded. But what has been disturbing, or it's just kind of like maybe how he's going, is that he's just become essentially like a new Rush Limbaugh, right? And it isn't that he's a partisan Republican, although he's kind of, a lot of the guests he's invited on, or, even when they're cultural, he sometimes pushes them on politics. It's not that he's a partisan Republican, though. It's that he's taken the kind of Wall Street, big business, big tech part of the Republican apparatus, as opposed to the kind of new right, Josh Hawley, sort of J.D. Vance approach, right? He's not suspicious of corporate power, although he says, he is, and then he has Mark Zuckerberg on and doesn't really challenge him, and has Mark Andreessen on and has Elon Musk on, and just is like, oh, the big problem is the regulatory agency that's trying to stop poor people from being scammed by overdraft fees, except he says it's, they're engaged in censorship, which isn't true. And it's just sad to watch that, because there is this really interesting populist part of the GOP. I mean, you guys were just talking about it, and yet Rogan has kind of moved away from that. And so to me, it feels very much like listening to Pravda, and it just kind of sucks to be like, oh, this guy used to be really good, and now you're getting sort of weird lies from him about, that are coming from Wall Street billionaires. Right?
Yeah, I love Joe. Obviously, we've been on the show. I think a lot of it is just tech people themselves are skilled at this, and if you're not equipped with the backstory, as you and I just discussed, we know about Libra, the Xi Jinping thing. That's long-time lore for anybody who's been covering the ins and outs of Facebook or of Mark Zuckerberg and his various shifts in the winds. It's easy to be convinced, if somebody was come to you and like, oh, well, they wanted us to censor a vaccine thing, and then they investigated our company. It's like, well, the investigation started in 2019, actually under the Donald Trump, DOJ. These are all the key backstory, but we appreciate you coming on as well, Matt. We love you, and we'll see you again soon.
Great to see you, Matt. Thank you.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Hey, if you like that video, hit the like button or leave a comment below. It really helps get the show to more people.
And if you'd like to get the full show ad-free and in your inbox every morning, you can sign up at breakingpoints.com.
That's right. Get the full show, help support the future of independent media at breakingpoints.com.